That's a big card.
He's not going to raise, huh?
Pretty hard to flop a fucking flush. You could have a set, or you could have a bluff. It's your money. Call.
What is up, guys? My name is Lex. Today is a two-part poker vlog, just like last week. We're here in South Florida, Seminole Casino, Coconut Creek, for my weekly 5, 10, and 10-25 bigger games. This first game is on a Thursday evening, 5, 10, 25, and it gets pretty crazy. First hand here, there's a button straddle to 25. I raise in the big blind with Queen Jack suited to $75. There's a call before Steve, a well-known action player in these games, re-raises me to $200. I make the call with Queen Jack suited, and the other player calls as well. We're going three ways to a Jack 10-9 two-heart board, giving me top pair and open-ended straight draw. I check. Late position player checks, and Steve puts out a bet of $200. I make a slightly unorthodox play and raise here to $600.
600. All in? All in.
How much?
1,000.
I have a big hand. After I raise, Steve snap jams all in for 3K. I think it's pretty evident that we're behind. If he does have aces or kings, however, we do have a lot of outs. If he's got ace-king or ace-queen or the ace-high, king-high flush draw, we're actually slightly ahead or flipping. I think early on in the game, I'm just going to gamble here. Two things could happen. One, I could win and be up 3K right off the bat. Or I could lose and Steve could have a 6K stack, which I will then add on for 6K, and we can maybe play some bigger pots later on. So I decide to gamble. I make the call.
Twice. Once or twice?
Twice. Fuck, that's not good at all.
You got two pair?
No. Two times.
I had the 8 of hearts. Oh wow, quad.
Oh my god, I hit the straight too. So sick. You win. Nice hand.
Well, I have to slow roll it. I gotta only put one of them out there.
Welp, we made the call and we're up against one of the worst hands possible, pocket nines for a set. That means our two pair and trip outs are no good. We have to either hit a king or an 8, running the board out twice, and we do not hit. Steve actually makes quads on the second board, and I'm drawing dead, even though I do hit my straight. So that means it is about 15 minutes into this poker session. I'm already stuck one buy-in. Okay, it might be a long night. After about an hour and a half of folding, I do pick up black pocket queens from early position. We're actually playing 10-handed now. I raise to $75 and get 4 callers, 5 ways to the flop here with queens, to Jack 5, 6, 2 diamonds. I bet out $200 into all these players and just get 2 calls. Turn cards a 7 definitely could help my opponents out with some straights and some 2 pairs, so I pot control and check. Middle position player puts out a bet of $550. Other player folds, and versus this particular player type, no way I can fold an overpair, but I am going to proceed with some caution. River card's a 2. I check, he checks, and we lose to 5, 7 of spades, 2 pair on the turn. Running these poker games, I found a new form of tilt. That tilt is whenever there's so much action, so much money being pushed around the table, and you're card dead. You can't win a hand. Every hand you do play, you lose. I'm in this game now for $12,000. I'm sitting with around an $8,000 stack. The good thing, though, is that there's a lot of money, a lot of gamblers, and a lot of ways to get it back. And I end up getting into a very, very interesting spot here. The blinds are at 5, 10, 25, blind raised to 50. 2 calls for 50, aces, beautiful spot, $300 to go for me. I end up getting a caller from middle position, and then Steve makes the call after over limping on the button. Steve is a pretty prominent player in these games. He loves to gamble. He loves to get in there. I just doubled him up a few hours ago. Let's hopefully try to get our money back. 3 ways here with aces. Almost $1,000 in the middle already to 5, 3, 3, 2 clubs. All in all, I think this is a great board for me. I bet out $300, 1/3 size of the pot, trying to get called by ace high, all pocket pairs, straight draws, flush draws. Middle position player folds, but Steve makes the call. Heads up now to the deuce of hearts on the turn. Obviously a great card. Really shouldn't change anything except for 6-4, ace-4, and pocket deuces, but Steve could still have some smaller overpairs. Remember, he limp called pre-flop, so he's not going to have 10s, jacks, queens, and kings, but he could still have 6s, 7s, and 8s, all flush draws, and even some straight draws still. $800 bet from me. Now back over to Steve. At this point, I glance over at him, and I do pick up a little bit of a tell, potentially, off of his body language. Like I said, I'm not always looking for tells, but after playing with Steve for a couple years, it just felt like he was incredibly comfortable. He was sitting there, and it looked like, possibly, he could have a huge monster. It looked like he didn't really have a decision. He was just taking his time to make it look like he had a decision with a hand like a straight draw or a pair or a flush draw, when in fact he was sitting with a monster. So once he calls this $800 bet, the alarm bells are slightly ringing in my head. It is possible we could be beat here by a straight, trips, or a full house. So when the final card comes out, the 9 of spades, front door flush draw misses, I decide now to check over to Steve. I'm expecting him to snap check back his 6s, 7s, and 8s, and also potentially even check back some of his missed draws as well, considering he might not think I'm gonna fold, but he picks up all of his big chips, and then throws out 3 pumpkins and 1 purple $500 chip. That equals a $3,500 bet on this river. Wow, this hand just got huge. I'm sitting here with aces. I raised pre-flop, bet the flop, bet $800 on the turn. I check the river, and now Steve fires out an over pot size bet of $3,500. What the hell do I do here with pocket aces? A bunch of things are going through my head. One, Steve is up on the night. Usually when players are up money, they tend to bluff a little bit less. However, Steve does know that I'm recording. The last video we played a huge pot in got over 130,000 views. Maybe he's trying to bluff me for the vlog, but maybe he just has me. Maybe he flopped a full house. Maybe he has a straight. Maybe he has trips, maybe even pocket 9s. It's a huge bet. I really don't know what to do in this situation. I go back and forth. Do I want to call or I want to fold? And eventually, I decide to fold. Oh my god, you're such a sicko.
Stand, call stands.
Fuck, I suck.
Video that one.
I fucking suck.
This bitch said video that one.
What's worse than losing a hand? Losing a hand and having your opponent windmill his cards over to the camera and having to post it to 60,000+ people. Yep, I just got completely owned, completely bluffed here by King 4 suited in a massive $10,000 pot. All I had to do was just flick in the call and Steve would have donated over $5,000 to me, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't find the call. I went with my read, and this time it was wrong. I think looking back, my hand is just too strong to fold. I do have the ace of clubs, which matters a little bit. I do block the ace high flush draws that he could be bluffing with. But all in all, I think in this situation, I just have to close my eyes and call, and if he's got me, he's got me. Unfortunately, I made a pretty exploitative fold, and it did not work out in my direction. Now I'm stuck over $5,000 on the night, and I'm even more tilted. It's now a few hours later, and we bumped the game to 10, 25, 50. Big blind raises to 300. I called a strata with king, queen of clubs, and we're going heads up here in position to a king high board. My opponent checks to me. When you make top pair over $600 in the middle, the standard play is just a bet, so I put out $250. My opponent thinks for a little bit of time and makes the call. Turn card queen of spades, very interesting one. Gives me top 2 pair but also brings in the flush. When my opponent check calls to flop, I think he's going to have hands like weaker king X hands and also some smaller pocket pairs like 9s, 10s, or jacks. I think it's hard to get called by worse hands on this board for 3 streets, so I check back this turn card. Going to the final one, which is an offsuit 2, and now my opponent leads out for a very, very small bet. The same size bet I made on the flop, $250. This is around a 10% pot bet, and I think in this situation we're just going to have to raise our hand. I think my opponent would be betting bigger with a flush. Also think he would be c-betting a flush on the flop. I actually think he's going to have a lot of the time hands like King Jack, King 10, possibly even aces or ace king. With top 2 pair on this board, considering he shouldn't have a flush, I raise here to $1,200, kind of working off my image too. I've been down, getting crushed all night. Maybe I'll get called off a little bit lighter. My opponent calls, I show king, queen, and he shows pocket kings for top set. Oh my God, what is going on tonight? Top set versus top 2 pair, and I lose another big one. Now down 6K on the night. For those of you who have been keeping track, yeah, we're 10 minutes into the video and I have yet to showcase a winning hand. That is exactly how this Thursday night session is going. Bad beats, coolers, bad folds has led me now to be down thousands and thousands of dollars around 2:30 a.m. But what can you do? I'm not going to quit. Got to continue to trudge on. $50 straddles on. I raise pocket nines to $150. I get 3 callers, $600 in the middle to Jack, Jack 4, 2 diamonds. All in all, pretty great flop for pocket nines. Shouldn't be up against a bigger overpair considering nobody raised me pre-flop. So when it checks to me, I put out a pretty big bet here, $300, looking to get value from smaller pocket pairs, a 4, or possibly a flush draw. The button makes the call and the other players fold. I think to myself, what would be a great turn card here? How about a 9? Oh my God, things are finally turning around in my direction. I make a full house here around 2:30 in the morning. Out of position, I'm going to continue to bet, but I don't want to bet too big. I want to still get called by flush draws. I want to get called by pocket pairs, maybe even 10s or 8s or 7s. I bet $400. The player on the button thinks and makes the call. It's always great news when you turn a full house, bet, and get some action. But the way I've been running, it's possible I could be up against a bigger full house or even quads. On this offsuit 3 on the river, I'm just going to go for broke. I actually think it's very possible he could have a hand like Jack 10, Queen Jack. So I bet out $2,000 here, targeting a Jack X holding.
Lex, if you got him, you got him.
Pocket
I got it on the turn.
3 nines. Wow, he caught it. Unbelievable, he caught it.
Second.
Wow.
A cooler here, trips versus a full house. My opponent shows King Jack. Wow, a hand going my way, $3,000 of profit. Now, I'm still down almost 4K on the night, but hey, this does chip away a little bit at the dent. Okay, now put this in perspective. The very next hand after that pocket nines, I get King Jack of diamonds. I raise to $200 in the big blind. The player who I just coolered, King Jack versus a full house, makes the call. Late position player calls and Steve makes the call. Flop comes down king high, multi-way here, I check. And the guy I just coolered, full house versus trips, goes all in for $1,600 into around an $800 pot. The action's here on the cutoff who folds, and Steve makes the snap call for $1,600. A very interesting spot. I've got King Jack on a king high board. There's a ton of straight draws and flush draws out here, but am I beat when a player goes all in for 2x pot and Steve snap calls? I'm not really sure, but I'm not in the mood to fold top pair, especially down thousands of dollars around 3 o'clock in the morning, so I make the call for $1,600, and just like that, we're playing another big pot around $5K in the middle. There is some side action here between me and Steve, $6,000 effective. Turn brings in the flush. I check, and Steve checks back. Okay, that's good. River card 7. Only 1 or 2 straight draws get there. I'm going to check, try to get to showdown. Hopefully my king is good, but it's not. Steve's got king 4 for 2 pair, and the other player had 7-4 of spades for a flush. And just like that, winning a pot with a full house and then losing here with top pair. I do cash out for a massive $11,000 stack at this 5-10 game, but I'm in for much, much more. The next morning I wake up to a beautiful fall November day here in South Florida. The trees are green, the sky is blue, the temperatures are dropping to 70-ish, and the dogs are enjoying some balcony time. I decided to take out my motorcycle on a nice evening stroll down the street to Bank of America, yeah. After losing for a month and a half, gotta replenish the bankroll a little bit. A poker player's worst nightmare. I've definitely done a lot of tough things in my life. Growing up, I played a lot of sports, soccer, football. I was a wrestler. I did wrestling for about 15 years into college as well. One of the tougher things I've ever done in my life was wrestling in college. Cutting weight, trying to deal with class and two-a-day practices, the heat, getting beat up every single day. That was really tough mentally and physically. CrossFit as well was pretty tough mentally and physically. I mean, it's a tough, demanding sport. You got to train all the time. That was pretty tough. Going through a poker downswing, however, is up there when it comes to the mental toughness that you have to have, and just the difficultness of just losing all the time, especially when you play poker for a living. So poker is not my only source of income, but it's a pretty big source of my income still. So losing for a while is never fun. Lost $6,500 last night, which puts me in a $45,000 downswing since October. Losing $45,000 for anyone is never fun. Losing it in about a month and 10 days is also not fun. One of the main questions I get, I feel like, on this channel, on Instagram or whatever, is what do you do? How do you deal with a downswing? Well, I've been on numerous downswings, 10, 15 downswings where you go down, 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 and eventually you do come back up. The bigger stakes you play, the deeper stacks you play, the bigger of the downswing and the bigger of the upswing as well. So back in my 2-5 days, I may go on a $8,000 downswing. Back in my 5-10 days, maybe I go on a $20,000 downswing. Now that I'm playing bigger, deeper stacks, 45K downswing. Last year I went on a 60K downswing. The thing I would say is, as long as you're playing good and you're playing in games where you're not the worst player at the table, that's all you can really do. You just got to put in the hours. So my main goal now is just to try to put in hours in good games and try to play my best. But it's tough, man. I mean, last night, that hand against Steve, pocket aces, if I call his $3,500 bet on the river, I'm probably even on the night, and who knows, maybe that would change the trajectory of the night as well. You have no idea what's going to happen. So, a little bit tilting there to fold aces when he was bluffing for $3,500, but what can you do? I'm heading to the gym now, going to get a workout in. Tomorrow, we'll be back at it for some more poker, and hopefully we can get some of our money back. The next day I went to Fort Lauderdale Beach and went on a little bit of a run, came out here to the sand to listen to the waves and somewhat disconnect before a potential stressful big night of poker. Saturday night, 10:25 no limit, 6K max buy-in, 2 times bigger than Thursday. Let's hope we can run a little bit better tonight. Let's get right down into the first hand, which is a big one. Mr. Bluffer Steve here raises under the gun to $75. Player next to act re-raises to $200. I cold call with 5-6 of spades, looking to squeak in there with a suited connector, potentially smashing the board in position deep stacked. Small blind cold calls $200. Big blind calls $200, and Steve calls just like that. First hand of the night here. 5 ways in a 3-bet pot, over $1,000 in the middle. I'm going to have last action, and the flop is pretty sick. 4, 7, 8. I flop the nut straight, but all the cards are the same color. They're spades. I flop a straight flush. Oh my God. And it gets even better when Steve now leads out for $400. Initial raiser ends up folding. And how do you play the nut straight flush multi-way when someone leads out? I think you just call. You got a slow play here, hoping they catch up, hoping somebody else comes in the pot, which is what happens. Small blind calls $400 as well. We are now down to 3 ways. This pot's over $2,000 to an ace on the turn. A fantastic card. If somebody has ace king, ace queen with the ace of spades, they now made top pair. Small blind checks, and Steve bets out $1,000. Just like in high school when your girlfriend finally lets you take her top off, I am rock hard right now. But I take my time considering my options. Should I just call, or maybe should I raise? If I was heads up versus Steve, I may consider raising. But with this other player in the pot, I do not want to scare him away. I want him to continue to call with possibly a flush or maybe a set. So I make the call for $1,000. Back over to the small blind, who folds. Heads up now, in position versus Steve. 2 and offsuit 6, bringing one liner now to a straight. Hoping Steve continues to bomb it, but he slows down and checks over to me. I think once he bets the flop and bets the turn again, he's going to have a very strong hand. 2 pairs, sets, straights, maybe some flushes. I got to get this guy back from that massive $3,500 bluff he made 2 days before when I folded aces. So I take my time and I assemble a bet of $3,000. Steve now does his signature move, which is exposing his cards on the river. I can see now that he's got ace of spades and an 8. So he's got top 2 pair with a nut flush draw blocker. He's thinking over his options if he wants to call or fold, and as you guys heard in the beginning of the video, he's trying to talk himself into a fold, but eventually he says, it's your money, and makes the call.
It's your money. Call.
I got it.
Straight plus. Wow.
Roberto,
You would have lost more.
what do you have?
Ace king.
Ace king? Wow.
But
I
didn't
got,
have any.
I got tricky and I had pocket kings.
Can you put it in front of, on top of the board, please?
You would have called.
Yeah.
I was gonna flip for it, but fuck.
Probably,
Good thing you didn't raise. If you raised your fuck.
I got tricky.
Second straight flush in the fluff.
All right, a much better start tonight. Winning over a $10,000 pot. I have over a $14,000 stack. Let's just hope we can continue this trend. Just one hand later, Steve, being the psycho he is, calls off $6,500 with a flush draw and stacks top pair, top kicker to win over a $12,000 pot.
Come on, it's 25 increment.
Finally, luck. Wow, you were way behind there, buddy.
I said Steve.
Still down, I think.
With the $50 straddle on, I raise under the gun with ace king offsuit to $200. Button makes the call for $200, and Steve, with a lot of money in his stack, makes the call for $200 as well. 3 ways to queen, 5, 6, 2 hearts. Steve checks, I check, and the button checks behind. Turn card, jack of spades, bringing in 2 flush draws and giving me a gut shot straight draw. After the flop checks around, I'm going to go with a delayed C-bet here of 225, and the button makes the call. I think he's going to have a lot of straight draws and Jack X holdings, so when the final card is the 7 of spades, heads up, I can represent all King X of spades hands that I would play exactly like this, so I decided to put out an overbet here of $1,300 as a bluff, trying to get my opponent to fold out a jack or a pocket pair underneath the board. Over here to the button, who thinks for a while, I'm hoping this $1,300 sizing will make him go away, but he doesn't. Eventually, he puts in the call with King Jack for second pair, and we end up losing over $1,500 in this hand. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know I am a chocolate addict, so around 11 o'clock, I order myself a slice of chocolate cake from the deli downstairs. Whew, this thing is amazing. And then I'm playing a double board bomb pot and calling all in for $1,400 with King, King, 6, Ace. I've got a full house down below and an overpair up top, and I end up chopping up this big bomb pot.
I think Black's probably
Kings 4 on the bottom, kings and 3s up top. He's got 3 deuce up top.
Wow, the threes. I had 4, 5.
Oh my god, he's got the last king.
I had 4, 5.
What's the airport he's talking about, Steve?
LaGuardia or JFK? No, there's another one.
That's newer.
EWR, that's the one. But there's one more. ES something.
There's one more?
Yeah.
5. In the last interesting hand of the night, Steve calls 50. I raise 200 with King Jack, and now Steve limp re-raises me to $500. Interesting play, but we're 12K effective, so I make the call in position and flop top pair with a King High flush draw on a Jack High board. Steve looks back at his cards and then fires out a $500 bet, same bet he made pre-flop. Not going to go anywhere, so I make the call here. Turn is a 10. Expecting him to check and slow down sometimes, but he doesn't. Makes the same bet again, $500. I think I'm up against aces or kings, getting way too good of a price. Can't fold here, so I make the call, and the final card is a 9, bringing a one-liner straight to any 7 or any queen, and Steve bets again for $500. 500 pre-flop, 500 on the flop, 500 on the turn, and now on the river, I just feel like he probably has a queen or aces or kings. I don't think he's going to fold. I would have to make it like, I don't know, 3K, 4K, and just not in the mood of trying to get a big bluff through versus Steve. So I make the fold, and he shows pocket kings.
Nice bluff, Steve. Luck. Wow.
Jack.
What's that?
Jack.
I really don't regret holding it. I do like the one.
After starting off hot with a straight flush winning a 10K pot, I lose some back in 2 medium-sized pots. I go card dead for the next couple hours, and around 2 a.m. we call it. I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage, and cashing out for the night. All right, guys, that is it for this one. 2-part poker vlog. Thursday, I ended up losing $6,500 in the 5-10 game. Tonight, 10-25-50, I ended up winning $3,000. The straight flush hand on the flop and a 3-bet pot and getting paid off by Steve was the highlight of the night. I mean, you flop the nuts and a guy's betting into you on the flop and the turn and then calls a $3,000 bet on the river. That was by far the best hand for sure. But after that, I just kind of slowly trickled down. Not too much happened. I didn't really get into any big pots or too many big hands. I just was kind of card dead the rest of the night. So I'll take a 3K win. However, it was nice to be up $6,000, but you know, what can you do? Can't complain. As always, great game. I'm really enjoying, like, as the night goes on, we get like shorter and shorter handed. So we start with maybe 9 players, then go to 7, then go to 5, and I just like playing higher stakes, shorter handed by the end of the night. It's just kind of like a competition, you know, you're battling back and forth, playing bigger pots. So that's kind of my favorite part of the night. Unfortunately, just a little card dead, not too much going on. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, I'll see ya.